I loved working with the characters at Walt Disney World, but there were 5 in particular that weren't my favorites. 4 of which are characters, and 1 of which, well, you'll see. Generally, as a photographer, working with the characters at Walt Disney World was so much fun. It was a blast. Every time you turned around, it was something new and exciting, and watching people get to meet their favorites. But there were a few that weren't as popular, weren't my favorites to shoot. And there were a couple that, honestly, they just stunk. They were the ones that, when you saw who you were working with that day, and you pulled it up and you went, oh, and I'm sorry, when you start going over shooting pictures of a character, yeah, it's not going to be a real good day. Here are the 5, generally in order from not as bad up to the worst. Number 5, the little Einsteins in the Disney Junior characters in general. I shot pictures of JoJo and Goliath. I shot pictures of the little Einsteins. I shot pictures of several of the other Disney Junior characters. And the problem with them isn't so much that people don't want to see them, although there's that, but the characters have no depth. Because they're aimed at little kids, there really isn't much to them. And you get little kids that want to see them, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. But for the most part, older than that, they don't care. The adults don't want to see them. There's no personality. The poor little Einsteins, I could sing their theme songs. You get the little Einsteins totally stuck in your head, and it won't go away. But the characters themselves, they're not any different from each other than how they look. Honestly, I shot them probably 2-3 dozen times, and I never figured out their names other than little Einsteins. And that's just sad. It's because there's nothing there. And so it makes it hard for them to interact with the guests, which makes it hard for the photographers to shoot pictures, and there's not a whole lot going on. JoJo and Goliath were probably the most personality-wise of the Disney Junior characters. But that whole area, when you just drew Disney Junior or the animation courtyard, you were just like, oh, yeah. Okay, well, we'll get through today. There just was not much interesting there. Now you've got Doc McStuffins and Vampirina meeting in the same area, and they kind of have a little bit of the same issues, I would imagine. So that's kind of why they're there. It was just all right, not going to be a real interesting day. Number 4, Duffy. Now you may be going, who's Duffy? And that is the problem. Duffy was a very popular character from Tokyo Disney. He's essentially the Tokyo Disney teddy bear, wears kind of a sailor suit with the white hat and the white bib. A little bit like Donald's, but without the blue shirt. Duffy's hugely popular in Japan, kind of like Figment is at Epcot. He's just a very popular figure. And they thought, hey, why not? Let's grab Duffy, who's hugely popular in Japan. Let's bring him to Florida. And everybody went, who's the bear? Is that Pooh? No, it's not Pooh. Look, he's got a sailor's hat. No, that's not Donald. Who is that? And poor Duffy, because nobody knew who he was, we would hear all the time, people would walk up in line with their autograph books. Hey, who is that? Where'd he come from? And they knew nothing about him, which made it impossible for poor Duffy to really interact because nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what to do. It was basically, here, sign my book and let's get a picture because I don't know anything about you. How are you today? Is it hot out here? It's Florida, duh. That was a typical Duffy interaction. Just nothing to it. I felt so bad for Duffy because Duffy was, having a hard time himself, just trying to get something basic going, and you couldn't do it because nobody knew him. Duffy lasted, I think, about a year, maybe 2, and then quit doing meet and greets because nobody knew who he was. and the lines, there was an initial burst of lines, and then it just shrunk, and Duffy quit getting visitors, and so Duffy went back to Japan. Number 3, Mike and Sully from Monsters, Inc. Okay, now I love Monsters, Inc. I love Monsters University. I love the characters. I love the movies. They're amazing. They're awesome. They stink at meet and greets. They have tried a couple different times to give them decent backdrop sets. But the problem that Mike and Sully have is they are very unanimated characters. They're very hard for them to interact. Mike's arms are basically sticks that do this. His face is frozen and there's nothing he can do except robot. Mike, you're supposed to be a monster, not a robot. That doesn't work. Sully kind of has a similar issue in that he's got these really long, huge arms that, again, can't do much except kind of move around. He can sort of hug, but it was very difficult to do that. It was difficult for Sully to do much of anything. And because they couldn't even really move their arms or animate or move their hands, it was very difficult for them to communicate. They couldn't do autographs. They couldn't really sign a whole lot except, hi. I don't know. It looked almost like a karate chop. They were kind of scary in that regards. And so their meet and greets ended up oftentimes being kind of stiff and awkward and not great. And it was kind of sad because you got a couple great, amazing characters and they couldn't do much. Kind of an honorable mention here, King Louie has a very similar problem to Sully. The same kinds of issues with not being able to move his arms and everything. But he usually can be balanced because Baloo is there most of the time. And so Baloo kind of makes up for King Louie a whole lot. When you've got Sully being balanced by Mike, who could do even less, yeah, it was not a great meet and greet. So I've been talking about different characters. Now we get a little bit of a different kind of interaction. And then the worst one is coming, and they're not like anything else. Have you had a bad interaction with a character? Was there a character that just didn't work? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to share them. So my number 2, Lightning McQueen and Mater from Cars. This, honestly, as far as characters go, was my least liked. I don't want to say hated, but I did not like working with them. And it wasn't their fault, but they're cars. They basically would drive up, or depending upon where they were, they would open up where they were. They would sit there. They didn't interact. They didn't do anything. You might get a revving motor, or you might get them to rock a little bit. But for the most part, they sat there and did nothing. And what a meet and greet consisted of with them was the family walking up. They would stand next to the car. We would take the picture and they would leave. And that was it. There's no communicating. There's no talking. I mean, BB-8, for his issues, he can at least beep at you and shake. But Lightning McQueen and Mater couldn't do anything except rev their engines a little bit. And that was very random. You didn't know when they were going to do it. There was no way to do an autograph. You couldn't stick a book under the tire. That was not going to work. And then where we ended up having to stand oftentimes as photographers, the cars with nobody in them would be sheltered and under shade, and the photographers, we'd be standing in the sun getting the pictures. It sucked. It really did. You had completely uninteractive characters, no shade, in the heat, boring meets. Oh gosh. When I would walk up and start the day there, I'd find the attendant and we would look at each other and we go, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. Oh, let's just go be sorry together. Because it was a terrible, terrible spot. Yeah, that was one that I felt like if you got them, it was almost like being punished. It was bad. They were my worst characters. There was one person that was worse. My number 1 hated character to work with. Two Shot. Okay, now Two Shot is the nickname that we gave to a friend of one of the characters. Two-shot would usually portray one character, and occasionally they would be friends with somebody else, but it was generally one specific character. Worked in Toontown, and none of the photographers liked Two-shot. And Two-shot didn't like the photographers either. In fact, Two-shot actually predated the days of PhotoPass and didn't like photographers being around. So you may be wondering, why did we call her Two-shot? Well, a normal character meet and greet, the end of it, you get two pictures. You get a vertical picture that shows everybody head to toe, and then you get a close-up horizontal. Before that, though, you're taking pictures of the interactions, the autographs, the hugs, and stuff like that. Two-shot wasn't going to allow any of that. I mean, none. It was two shots at the end. If you tried to take a picture of the autograph, she would stop signing, or she would turn her back to you. If she was giving a person a hug and you tried to get a picture, she would turn her back to you, or she would block their faces with her arms, or do whatever she could to ruin the picture and make sure you couldn't get it. She wouldn't play with the guests, especially if there was a camera on, because it was two shots. And that's what she would do. If you tried to get other pictures in front of the guests in the middle of their meet and greet, she would go, "Excuse me, it's not about you and what you want, it's about the guests." She was the bane of our existence. The photographers complained and complained because you couldn't shoot. You could not get pictures of the guests with her. Even when she would take the two shots, half the time she'd pose in such a way that they came off crappy. And we're kind of like, you are missing the point of what your job is here. Your job is to make memories for those guests, not feed yourself. Drove us nuts. After months, it might have even been a year or so of complaining and issues and trouble, there came a day when Two-shot just didn't show up anymore. Now, she was older. Far as we know, she might have retired. She may have been told to retire. They might have moved her someplace else. I honestly don't know. But Two-shot was the worst. So there are the worst characters, the places I hated working when I was working at Disney. Most of the time I loved what I did. I mean, when you figure I've only got 5 out of how many? Yeah, I loved what I did. But yeah, there were the exceptions. Thank you so much for hitting that like button, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. I love to hear your feedback. Don't forget to check that description too. There's a ton of info, including information about my financial supporters. I couldn't do this without them. They have been amazing, and they get some neat perks and inside info as well. I also want to give a huge shout out to a couple that have signed up and actually increased their pledges. So thank you so much to Robert Pincus and to Rich Walker, and a welcome back to T-Chest Media. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for watching. God bless. Now, I shot pictures of Goliath, of... Thank you so much for hitting that like button, sharing, and subscribing already. Ooh, I almost forgot I need to do... Okay, come here, mouse. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. So there's the worst character experiences I had. Oh my gosh, I'm blowing this whole bit. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to know about contact information, fan pages, merchandise, and more, please be sure to check the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to know when I have new ones, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button right up there. And if you want to see another one of my videos, well, I've got a great one for you right here. And a huge thank you to these wonderful people here who support me on Patreon and with YouTube memberships. They get behind-the-scenes information, special perks, and more. If you'd like to know more about that, well, make sure you check that button right there. Thank you so much.